was on his last leg. And that Lakers team was just unreal. Like, that was a super team for real. They couldn't be beat.
Yeah, I look soft in the squares, lettuce, but I'm full of spinach, make the strongest grimace. Leaving the fries and after Guinness, cause my record's splendid, they a trip like Venice. On part like a Donna Toronto chemist, how I mix some rhythms, call me bartender. Like boneless chicken, uncooked, I sicken when I throw a spittin'. See a kitten, but this cat is killing. And to beat the victim, dropping prisons in my bars, you sitting, water, no St. Quentin.
Big time players from, I'm just saying, the 90s on, right? A lot of them didn't have great teams. I know we try to romanticize it because it's the 90s and everything about the 90s is dope. Everything about the 90s is not dope, but most of the stuff in the 90s is dope. I would have the 90s as a top decade in the last 100 years, the 80s as a second decade, but that's just my personal choice. But the 90s, especially the 90s basketball, was a really, really good time in the NBA. It went global. Michael Jordan definitely was the star of the league. He definitely helped push that brand outside of it, along with the Dream Team, and what he piggybacked off of what the Celtics and the Lakers did with their rivalry in the 80s, namely Magic and Bird, of course, and just busted wide open, man. The bank came for everybody, you know. A lot of whack players started getting paid residuals, and now you see a lot of sorry players. Not a lot, but you see some players don't deserve their contracts, and they getting it. That ain't what you earn, is what you can negotiate. So they getting that bag. So shout out to them for getting that bag. It is what it is. But I'm just talking about play. A lot of players from back in the day did not have great teams. Patrick Ewing didn't win a championship in the 90s. Not because of Michael Jordan's greatness, but because he didn't have a great team. Karl Malone and John Stockton, yes, they were great. Nobody else around them was great. Coach was pretty good. Jerry Sloan was pretty good. But they never built a solid team around that pitch. And they missed out on having Mark Eaton, who was also a 7'3" center. I think he was 7'4". He led the league in blocks multiple times. I think he's like number 2 all time in blocks or something like that. If they would have had him in the 90s, I think he retired in the early 90s or the late 80s or something like that. But if they would have had him, there's no way they would have lost to the Bulls twice in the finals. No way. No way. No way. But, yeah, so they didn't have a great team around them. Decent, yes. It was the best team the Bulls faced was the Jazz in the finals. Reggie Miller, he didn't have a great team around him, despite what people think. Actually, the team he had with Jermaine O'Neal and I think Ron Artest, when they went to the finals and they played the Lakers, what year was that? 2001, 2002 or something like that. That was the best team Reggie Miller was on, but at that time, obviously, Reggie Miller was out of gas and he was on his last leg. And that Lakers team was just unreal. Like, that was a super team for real. They couldn't be beat. At least in the first 3 tries, they couldn't be beat. But I noticed a lot of players have been talking once again from the past because they understand that, man, these players are having more player empowerment thanks to somebody like LeBron James. They're having more player empowerment now and choosing where they want to go and things of that nature, which players should. You know what I'm saying? I'm for player empowerment. A man should be able to control his own destiny in this world to a certain extent. But a lot of them players didn't have great teams. Charles Barkley never had a great team. Never was on a great team. The closest he came was in 93 once again with the Phoenix Suns. They played really, really good that year. I think they had the number 1 record in the league that year, or the number 2 record, or definitely the number 1 record in the West. Went to the finals, lost to the Bulls. I never thought they were going to win either. I don't think many people thought that they were going to win. They had a good fighting chance, but not good enough. There was Mitch Richmond, who played for Golden State Warriors, was a great 2-guard, and the Sacramento Kings. It never was on a great team. Never. A lot of these players from the 90s, you know, weren't on great teams. The team, I don't know how they were building the team structure. I don't understand what they were doing, because when I look at the 2000s and I look at the 2 dynasties that existed in the 2000s, which were the Lakers and the Spurs, those teams were built well. Those teams were built for playoff success. Those teams were not built on the back of one person. They didn't surround themselves with inadequate players consistently. They had a few trash guys on the end of the bench, 12 through 15. But that first 10, 11, those guys were solid. Right? And if you got a weak bench, you can't expect to beat anybody long term. So I think that the article makes perfect sense, and I think it shows a big what if in Drexler's career. Of course, Drexler ended up still getting the championship when he teamed up, as they said, in 94, 95 with Hakeem Olajuwon. Hakeem Olajuwon was never on a great team. What he did with those Rocket teams was nothing short of a miracle, if you ask me. Those 2 championships he won with the Rockets, those Rockets were pretty good. They were. Those Rockets were pretty good. But the year following, they weren't as good, obviously. And then the year after that, the 95-96 Bulls came in and won 72 games, and they just demolished everybody. But understand is, like I said, you have to give your stars more help. What they put around LeBron James when he was in Cleveland was terrible. It was a travesty. The notion of, oh, players just want to win easy. No, players want to win. You always talk about the old days and how they were such warriors and they wanted to win at all costs. But if you ask most of those players back then, would you have liked if management got some better players? Most of them would tell you yes. Yes, I'm going to still go out there and fight and I'm going to do my thing. But at the same time, I can't carry this whole franchise. We're playing against the Lakers and the Celtics and they have multiple All-Stars. Future Hall of Famers, I've got one. You think that I'm really going to win? That's why the 70s was the most competitive the NBA has ever been. So far. The 70s had like 8 people win a championship. Had like 8 teams win a championship. Talk about parity. But of course, 70s basketball wasn't very glorious and it wasn't the best, obviously. Technology has made basketball much better in so many ways. But it's also diluted the product when you have a great player, in my opinion. It dilutes the product when you have a great player on the team who has the weakest team. I don't want to see the best player in the league with a terrible team trying to carry that whole franchise. And it's why Wilt Chamberlain lost so many times when it came to NBA Finals or when it came to playing against the Celtics. He was better than everybody out there. Any man that can average 50 points and 25 rebounds for a season is obviously unreal. He's a monster. He is a team by himself. But where he didn't have enough help. Oh yeah, Jerry West, that wasn't enough. The other people had more. The team that was better had more All-Stars. And now what we have in this era, we are expecting Herculean efforts from certain people, and it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Learn how to build better teams. Stop relying on one person, you fools.